The morning sky over Santa Barbara looked like silk. Pale blue stretched taut over the terracotta roofs and palm tops, as if someone had ironed the wrinkles out of the world for one perfect day. My Nguyen stood at the window of the bridal suite in the old Mission Hotel and watched the ocean breathe. She pressed her palms to the glass and felt its coolness, a counterpoint to the heat in her chest. It is really happening, she thought. I am getting married. Her reflection watched back, hair pinned into a glossy twist, silk dress pooled like moonlight at her hips, face touched with a soft glow the makeup artist called California Skin. On the vanity behind her lay an open jewelry box with a delicate jade pendant shaped like a teardrop leaf. It had been her mother's since Sagan before the family fled. Her mother had given it to her last night after the rehearsal dinner, pressing it into my palm with a tight smile and eyes that would not quite meet hers. Wear this for luck, Con. It kept me safe once. It will keep you safe again. Now the pendant sat on its white cushion, green against cream, like a tiny island of home. I had almost put it on. Instead, she had closed the box and kept her hands busy with anything else. Her mother's smiles had been strange the last few weeks. Her mother's phone calls had been shorter, dodging questions about the guest list and the seating chart and whether Uncle Long would make his famous caramelized pork to add to the buffet. There had been whispers in Vietnamese between her mother and Aunt Lan on the patio at night while the tiny garden lights blinked like fireflies transplanted from another life. I had told herself not to press. When people want to tell you something, they tell you. If they do not, they have their reasons. She turned away from the window as the door opened. Elise, her maid of honor, breezed in with a tray balanced on her hand and a practiced grin. Coffee with oat milk and a honey croissant. Bride edition. Also, breathing exercises if required. And a playlist that is 90% Lizzo in case you need to be reminded that you are a goddess. I laughed, grateful for the sound. Elise wore a silk robe the color of ripe peaches, the sleeves falling back as she set the tray down. The breeze knocked at the gauzy curtains and filled the room with the smell of salt and orange blossoms from the courtyard below. Elise studied me as if checking a painting for balance. You look like a secret whispered in a cathedral. That is a compliment in my language. Thank you. I rolled her shoulders once, twice. The pendant box caught her eye. She reached for it, then drew her hand back. Do you think I should wear it? If you love it. If you feel like you are putting on someone else's story. Elise said it gently, and I exhaled again. The pastry flaked golden when she broke it. The coffee tasted like courage. Daniel texted a few minutes later. A picture of him in a navy suit. Hair tamed. Tie straight. Grin crooked. Caption, I love you more than the Pacific, and that is a lot of salt water. Are you ready? I typed, almost. Her thumbs hesitated over the keys. Then added, can you believe it? He replied, every second. And never? That is how you know it is real. Elise took her phone and tucked it into a pocket. Time to get zipped, baby. She guided me into the dress with the same care she had used to guide her through freshman year chemistry when they had been lab partners with cracked goggles and relentless ambition. You are marrying a good man. You are a good woman. This day belongs to you both. It belongs to many people. My thought. To the giant wheels of family and history and the invisible math of luck. To the ghost palm of her grandmother who had never seen California. To the scar her father kept hidden under his watch band. A thin pale line that once opened to the hard edges of a camp gate halfway around the world. It belongs even to Tyler. She thought, and the thought startled her like cold water. She had not said his name aloud in months. Daniel knew some of the story because Daniel knew the shape of her life and how to fit himself into it without folding her. But there were parts she had pressed flat and left between pages. Old love like dried flowers. Pretty. Fragile. A little sharp. The photographer knocked, and the room bloomed with shutter clicks. With laughter, with the soft choreography of wedding morning. Aunties arrived like a small wave carrying bobby pins and hairspray and unsolicited blessings. Cousins with glossy hair peered in and squealed and fled, called back by Aunt Lan who moved like a general with a binder. My mother came last. Quiet, wearing a pale blue suit that made her look like the sky after rain. She kissed my cheek without leaving a mark. She did not look at the jewelry box. She adjusted the dress at the shoulder, smoothed it once, and stepped back. Beautiful? She held my gaze for a second too long, Then she turned and spoke briskly about timing and cars and the heat that would rise later. Mai swallowed the question that had been sitting on her tongue all week. Have I missed something? She told herself again that after the wedding, after the tide went out and the sand lay flat, there would be time to ask. The ceremony would be in the courtyard with a fountain that whispered of Rome and ficus trees that had grown fat and sculptural under California suns. Mai had chosen simple flowers, white roses and eucalyptus, and the arch had been built yesterday with soft strings of lights woven through. Daniela's sister would sing. Her father would walk her down the aisle. It felt like a math problem with a neat solution line by line. Except the numbers kept rearranging themselves in the corner of her eye. In the hallway on the way to the elevator, Mai paused as the world tilted a millimeter. She put a hand to the wall and felt that the paper swove in texture. Elise stopped with her, anchoring them both with a hand. You okay? Elise's voice was a thread. Mai nodded, the moment passing. Just a lot of everything. Elise squeezed. We will make it friendly. She said it as if chaos were a guest to be seated near the open bar. The car smelled faintly of new leather and peonies. Through the window, Mai watched the city turn its weekend face to them, the cafes spilling people onto sidewalks, the bright twinned flags of children's shirts and beach towels, the quick lick of sun on windshields. Her father sat beside her, quiet as always in cities. He did not like traffic or noise or the feeling of being boxed in by tall buildings. But his hand was warm where it held hers. He glanced at her dress as if it were something both miraculous and dangerous. He cleared his throat. Con, you know I am proud. He stared ahead again, and she let the words fill the car like light. They arrived to the hum of vendors and planners and strings tuning. Mai stepped out into a courtyard turning to ceremony. Rows of white chairs filling with a confetti of voices and perfume and the rasp of programs being opened. A boy darted between chairs chasing a bubble that insisted on never touching ground. A group of Daniel's college friends laughed too loudly in a corner. Her mother conferred with the planner as if they were two surgeons prep-talking a heart. The fountain kept whispering. The ocean smell threaded everything, as steady as counting. Back in the small dressing room off the courtyard, Mai waited with Elise and Daniela's sister, Zul, who hummed shoes off, toes flexing like punctuation to songs Mai did not know. She tried to think only of Daniel. How his hands were gentle with small things like tea mugs and strangers' dogs. How he listened with his whole face. How he had cried when he proposed, because he cried when he was certain of joy and did not apologize for it. Her phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time of the ring he wore that had belonged to his grandfather. The gold warm against his skin. Caption. I am at the end of the aisle already in my head. Take your time. I am forever at the end of the aisle. The planner popped her head and showed him in 5. She made a hand signal like a choreographer and disappeared. Mai stood. The dress adjusted itself around her like a breath drawn and held. Elise kissed her cheek and took her bouquet from a chilled vase, handing it over with ceremony. The flowers were cool against Mai's fingers. The first notes of the piano braided with the sound of the fountain. The doors opened, and the courtyard lifted its face. Mai's arm tucked through her father's. They took one step. Then another. The aisle felt longer than it had yesterday when she had walked it in sneakers. Faces bloomed on either side. Familiar. Beloved. Curious. The far end. Daniel waited under the arch, his mouth a question arrow turning into a smile as he saw her. Mai felt something like gravity ease its hand under her ribs. She thought. They were halfway down the aisle when the first disruption arrived. It arrived in the form of Uncle Long, who stood abruptly from his seat in the 3rd row, his face the color of an unripe plum. He clutched his chest and swayed. The woman beside him yelped, and the sound flew ahead of itself and broke into the ceremony like a stone. Everything paused for the length of a collective inhale. Then movement flooded the edges. Elise slipped to the side to make space. Daniel stepped forward. Zoe stopped singing with her mouth still forming the shape of a note. The planner materialized like a magician and waved toward the staff. Call 911. Someone said. Call 911. Someone else repeated because repetition turns fear into a task. Mai's father tightened his arm to keep her steady, and together they moved off the aisle as guests surged. Gentle. Around them. Uncle Long's eyes were open. Darting. He said between his teeth that it was nothing, that it was embarrassing, that it was too much shrimp, that the sun was pointed straight down his throat. But his hands shook and his breath came like a hacksaw. A young man in a slate suit, a friend of Daniel's who worked in emergency medicine, crouched beside him. "You're okay? We are going to breathe together." Ow! The ceremony bent itself into an emergency and held. The paramedics came quickly because in this city they must. They moved with the whispery politeness of people who understood the choreography of other people's important days. They asked questions and took vitals and slipped an oxygen mask over Uncle Long's mouth. His color returned by degrees. He waved them off with a sheepishness that hurt to watch. "We will take him just to be sure," one paramedic said. "He is, but better to be safe." Aunt Lan insisted on going with him. She pressed my hands as she passed, her fingers damp and hard. "It will be fine. It is a low tide." Nothing more. As the ambulance pulled away, the courtyard attempted to remember itself. Chairs settled. The fountain started up its whisper again after an automatic shutdown that no one had noticed. Zoe cleared her throat like a singer finding the next song. The planner asked Mai if she wanted 5 minutes or 15. Mai looked at Daniel, and Daniel looked back with a question that had 1,000 answers. She lifted her chin. "We continue." Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. Uncle Long would scold us if we did not. He would say the shrimp was dramatic enough for all of us. The guests laughed in the gentle, relieved way people laugh after sirens are gone. They took their seats again with the care people give to fragile things. Mai and her father stepped to the edge of the aisle once more. They moved forward. Slower now, in a new kind of silence. A silence that knew about the bones of the day. As they reached the front, Mai glanced at her mother. Her mother sat too still, hands clenched in her lap, jaw tight as if holding a word she could not say. The clench bothered Mai like a burr under silk. She filed it away. She turned toward Daniel. The officiant began to speak. He had one of those radio voices that made you trust both flight delays and love. He said the words Mai and Daniel had chosen, words about choosing again and again, about the weather inside two people that changes and can be read with practice, about building a home that does not depend on a roof. He reached the part about any objections in clear, polite language that made it sound like a formality carved out of tradition and left there for birds to nest. He smiled as if no one would ever stand in that space. Not in 2025. Not under the sky. Then someone stood. At first Mai felt the motion before she saw it, as if the air had grown a new current that ruffled the edge of her dress. A figure in the back row, in a suit too dark for the hour, rose with a kind of caution that pretended to be confidence. My skin knew his shape before her eyes believed it. Tyler. The name rang in her bones like a dropped spoon. Elise made a small sound under her breath that meant, "Oh no, but also I am here." Daniel's jaw flexed and his eyes flicked to my eyes and then back, a quick calculation that did not darken into anger. The officiant hesitated. His practiced voice caught on an unpracticed edge. "Sir," he began, and then stopped because Tyler began, too. "I am." Tyler said, "I know this is insane. I know this is wrong. But I cannot sit and say nothing." Mai could not think of a single word that belonged to her body. The courtyard had become a photograph that would not finish developing. Birdsong from the garden beyond the wall stitched the moment together with a thread that felt too delicate to hold. Tyler's eyes found hers and flinched as if he had looked into a light he deserved. "We were together for a long time," he said. He swallowed. "I was not good enough. I know that. I thought I would be fine with you moving on. I thought I would be a grown-up about it." He looked at Daniel, then back at Mai. I now?" He took a breath that sounded like the breaking point in a song. "I should not be here. But I have to tell you something before you become someone else's wife." The word wife traveled through Mai as if her insides were a field of reeds. Her mother's face was a mask she did not recognize. Her father's hand had closed so tight on the back of her elbow it left a crescent moon. Elise was a statue of listening. Daniel's eyes did not leave Mai's. He was asking silently, "Are you okay?" He was saying silently, "Here." Tyler put his hands out as if he were surrendering to a movie version of the police. "I found something. Something about your family. About your immigration file. About your mother." I felt the world take a step backward. The whisper voices on the patio. The jade pendant waiting like a small green witness. Her mother's tightened jaw. Aunt Lan's two quick assurances. She wanted to say no. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to stop time and walk around it and choose a different door. This cannot be the moment. She thought. This cannot be my altar. But moments rarely ask for permission. They simply set the table and dare you to eat. The officiant cleared his throat. Sir, perhaps this is a conversation for another time, he said. His voice tilted toward authority. Tyler shook his head as if trying to dislodge a swarm. Wait, it will be buried. If it is buried, it will rot. I will carry the smell of it forever. He gestured awkwardly toward my mother. Her mother flinched as if swatted by light. Daniel took a small step, still within the arch, not leaving his place, but making space. He said my name, and the way he said it was a bridge held up by ropes and faith. I touched the jade pendant box in her mind. The lid creaked open and a wind blew out. She felt the weight of the dress. She felt the weight of history. She felt the weight of the single second in which a person decides which kind of courage they will use. I think we should hear him, she said. The words entered the air with the gravity of pebbles dropped into water. Rings of silence moved outward. Her father stared at her as if she had spoken a language he had half forgotten. Her mother closed her eyes once. The planner paged through her binder as if somewhere there was a protocol for men from the past arriving, with secrets at the foot of an arch. Tyler swallowed again, Adam's apple rising and falling like a small boat. I am, he said, and the words sounded like he had picked them up too many times and worn them smooth. A month ago, I was at the county records office dealing with a mess of my own. Because life is a kind comedian. I saw a file clerk I know, and we chatted, and one thing fell into another. And he mentioned your name because he remembered me from when we were us. He should not have done that. I should not have listened. But he said your mother came in last year about a record change. He said there was a petition to correct a marriage certificate issued in Texas in 1995. My mind blew a fuse and then reset. 1995 was before California. Before Santa Barbara. Before third grade English and orange slices. Before the house near the freeway with the lemon tree that grew too wild. Tyler's voice wobbled. The petition listed your mother as married to a man who was not your father. It listed a child born the next year. The child had your first name. The last name was different. He paused, and in the pause a breeze lifted the edge of my veil and laid it back down as if the wind were a hand blessing or a warning. Her mother opened her eyes and looked at the sky as if it could be made to answer. I do not know what it means. Tyler said, maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means everything. But when I asked your mother about it last week, she would not talk to me. She told me to stay out of it. She told me I had no right. She is right. I have no right. But I could not sit today and watch you promise a forever if there was a piece of yesterday that could knock the floor out later. I felt the courtyard grow tall around her. She thought of being small in Texas. A time blurred at the edges with heat and the smell of laundry dried on a line behind a half-painted house. She remembered a woman babysitting once while her mother worked a double. A woman with a gold tooth and a laugh that filled the whole front yard. She remembered a boy with a baseball cap who everyone said was her cousin, though they did not look alike. She remembered her own name being mispronounced by a school secretary for the first time and the way she had wanted to fold herself into a paper crane and fly back to any language where her name was a song. Her father stood like a pillar partly burned in some long-ago fire. Her mother sat like a statue carved by someone who had not liked the woman he was carving. Daniel's hand, by his side, opened and closed very slowly, as if counting the pulses of the day. This is not how we do this, my father said quietly. His voice had the scrape of a shovel metal on stone. We do not spill family into the street. We have a ceremony. After. We talk. After. We fix or we forgive. That is how we survive. Perhaps. Elise murmured. But sometimes the street is where family already is. Sometimes nothing breaks that was not cracked. She looked at my... Not asking. Only standing close to catch her if she fell. My turn to her mother. The air shifted as the choice moved from the man in the back row to the woman in the front. Mom, I said, the words small and enormous. Is there something I should know? She kept her voice level as if she were balancing a porcelain cup on it. Her mother's hands unclenched. Her shoulders lowered a fraction. She lifted her chin and looked at her daughter, and then at the man her daughter was about to marry. There are stories, she said. Her accent sharpened in the corners. There are always stories. We choose which we make into walls and which we make into doors. She looked beyond them at the fountain, as if the water were a time she had once walked into and could not fully leave. In 1995, I married someone for a paper I thought I needed to breathe in this country. It was not love. It was a favor with shadows. I was already in love with your father. But I was young and scared. I thought I could do both things. I could not. The courtyard seemed to lean in. Birdsong paused as if birds respect confession. Her mother continued, words measured and heavy. The man was a friend of a friend. I will not say his name. He disappeared after 1 year. We thought it was over. We moved to California and we made our life. Your father is your father. Nothing changes that. But last year, a letter came from Texas. They had finally processed an old correction because the county discovered 2 overlapping records. One had a child listed with the first name My. Mistake or not, I do know. Maybe a clerk added a name where there was none. Maybe something else. I wanted to erase it from the paper because paper becomes truth in America. I did not want it to become truth. I did not want it to chase you. Mai's heart felt like a bird that had flown too long over open water. She looked at her father. He stared at his wife with a face that was 2/3 fury and 1/3 grief, and something else that might have been relief to have anything to aim at. Asked you? He said. Months ago, I asked you if there were more papers. You said no. His voice did not grow louder. It grew colder. Cold carries in any weather. I was afraid, her mother said simply. Her eyes went to my. I did not tell you because I wanted you to have one clean thing. A wedding with only flowers and music and good shrimp. The courtyard laughed a tiny, helpless laugh at the mention of shrimp, then swallowed it because this was not a laughing place now. Daniel took another small step, the second step of a man who is learning how to move during an earthquake. He said, We can pause. We can go into that little room and shut the door and breathe and decide. We do not owe anyone our next move. We owe each other the most generous possible truth. We can give ourselves that. Mai felt the jade pendant around her neck in imagination, cool and exact. She walked mentally the hallway of her life, past the framed photographs of graduations, trips, of her parents in front of the lemon tree with its unruly beauty, of herself and Tyler once on a ferry in the rain, of herself and Daniel last winter holding mugs and laughing with their noses pressed together. She opened the door at the end of the hall and found a room filled with the present. In that room, everything was real and nothing was simple. She looked at Tyler, who had paled, as if remorse were weather. She looked at her mother, who was now her whole height and no longer pretending to be smaller to fit anywhere. She looked at her father, who loved like a fortress and did not understand how to open gates. She looked at Daniel, who was her chosen future and her softest fear. Okay, she said. We take 5 minutes. We go to the small room. We breathe. We decide together. Her voice did not tremble. The courtyard exhaled as if someone had removed a tight shoe from its foot. The officiant nodded gratefully. The planner pressed a hand to her headset as if communicating with whatever god oversees logistics. Zoe sat down slowly on her heels, then stood back up, as if music were an animal that had lain down and now needed coaxing. Elise moved like a shield, arranging the veil, steadying the bouquet, shepherding Mai and Daniel toward the side door. Mai felt her father release her arm. She felt her mother's eyes follow like hands that could not reach. She felt the day recalculate itself with the small chime of a capice. Recalculating. 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 In the small dressing room, the air smelled faintly of hairspray and peonies and the ghost of laughter. Elise closed the door and stood with her back against it. She looked at Mai and Daniel as if at 2 people in a lifeboat, which perhaps they were. I can stand outside and guard, she said. I can also stand inside and shut up. Your choice. Stay, Mai said. She set her bouquet on the vanity. Her hands shook for the first time all day. Daniel took one and kissed the inside of her wrist as if blessing a pulse. We talk fast or we talk right, he said soft. I've right. Mai nodded. Agreed. Right? Even if it takes more than 5 minutes. Outside, the fountain whispered its steady script. Water over water, history over paper, love over fear. Inside, Mai inhaled and found the bottom of her breath. She looked at the man she would marry, and at the friend who had brought chaos with true concern, and at the friend who would walk into fire with a spreadsheet if needed. The day had already broken twice. Perhaps breaking was the way light entered. Perhaps this was the only way to have a clean thing. To smash the surface and scrub every shard. She began to speak, And that was how the ceremony paused, and the real marriage started. The silence inside the dressing room felt alive. It paced the carpet. It scratched at the corners of the mirror. Elise leaned against the door like a guard in a fairy tale. Arms crossed, face sharp with loyalty. Daniel sat in the velvet chair, knees wide, elbows on them, staring at the carpet as if it could provide answers. Mai stood in her gown, unable to sit, the weight of the fabric reminding her of oceans and anchor chains. She was the first to speak. Her voice came out low. Careful. So it is true. There was another marriage. Another name. Daniel looked up at her. His eyes were steady. Not judgmental. Only searching. Do you believe her? She blinked. I always felt something left unsaid. But never like this. Elise shifted. Secrets are never quiet forever. They rot if you bury them too deep. She glanced at Daniel. And you? How are you processing this? He rubbed his jaw. Honestly, I am angry that it had to happen here. But I'm not angry at my... He looked at her then, and his voice softened. Not you. At timing? At people who think protection means hiding the truth until it blows up. He sighed. I do not care if there is another name in a dusty record. I care if you are safe. If you are still sure about us. Mai's throat tightened. I am sure about you. It is everything else I am not sure about. She glanced toward Elise. You think Tyler planned this? You think he wanted to ruin it? Elise frowned. I think Tyler believes in his own version of heroism. But sometimes heroism is just guilt-wearing clown. She tilted her head. The bigger question is, what do you want to do right now? Mai Sally. The dress puffing around her like a collapsing cloud. I want to scream. I want to ask my mother every question I was too polite to ask. I want... Her voice broke. I want to walk down that aisle and marry the man I love. Her eyes filled and she pressed them shut. But I do not want my marriage to start on a lie. Even if the lie is older than me. Daniel moved to her side, kneeling despite the silk and the dust. Then we will not start on a lie. We stop. We pause. We give your family space to bleed this out. And then? Tomorrow? Next week? Next month? We stand in front of whoever will listen, and we do it clean. His hand found hers again. You are my choice. The rest is weather. Elise gave a small approving grunt. That is the most unromantic and most romantic thing I have ever heard. Weather always changes, but love is the house built to survive it. Mai looked between them both. Her chest felt heavy and light at once. Okay. So what? We go back out there and announce an intermission. Elise smirked. I can play ringmaster. Ladies and gentlemen, due to unforeseen drama in county records, the wedding will resume at a later date. Drinks are still on us. They all laughed. Thin but real. The laugh loosened something. When it faded, Mai straightened. I want to say it myself. She lifted her chin. I want them to hear it from me. Not my mother. Not Tyler. The knock on the door was soft. Her father's voice. Rough. Con. The guests are waiting. Mai exchanged a glance with Daniel. Ready. He nodded. As ready as people can be for history gat-crashing their wedding. Elise opened the door. Her father stood like a weathered tree. Strong but cracked. He looked at her and at Daniel, then stepped aside. The walk back felt shorter, the courtyard smaller. The guests buzzed in their chairs like bees waiting to know if the hive still held honey. Mai's mother sat with her hands in her lap. Face pale? Tyler was gone from his seat. Perhaps escorted, perhaps banished by his own shame. She did not ask. Mai stepped to the front with Daniel. She did not look at the officiant. She looked at the faces, family and friends and strangers bound by invitation. Her voice did not shake. Everyone, thank you for being here. Today was supposed to be only joy. But sometimes truth arrives whether you invite it or not. She drew a breath. My family has secrets. Most families do. One of those secrets has come out today, and I cannot ignore it. Not here. Not now. Daniel and I love each other. That is real. But we want to begin our marriage with honesty. Not questions. So we are going to pause. We will not marry today. We will marry when the truth is aired. When the ground is steady. I hope you understand. I hope you will still celebrate with us now. Eat, drink, dance because love is still here, even if the papers are not signed. The courtyard exhaled. Ripple of murmurs. Some shocked. Some sympathetic. Some confused. Then Elise clapped, sharp and decisive. You heard the bride. The wedding is paused, but the party is alive. Who is ready for cake before vows? Laughter broke. Hesitant. Then stronger. The band struck up something light. People shifted. Relaxed. I felt her knees almost give. Daniel caught her with an arm around her waist. You were brilliant. You were brave. She leaned against him. I was just honest. That is all I can be. Her mother approached slowly. Eyes wet. Mouth thin. I am. She whispered. I wanted to protect you. I looked at her for a long moment. We will talk. Not now. But we will talk. Her mother nodded. Relief and dread tangled. As guests turned toward the buffet and the champagne. As children darted to the fountain to chase bubbles again. My louder self to breathe. The day was broken. But sometimes brokenness was the first shape of healing. Daniel kissed her temple. Shall we dance anyway? She smiled. Watery. Let us dance in the ruins. And so, under lights that had been meant for vows. They danced. Guests joined. Laughter returned. Music lifted. The wedding had not happened. But something else had. Something perhaps more important. By sunset, the courtyard had softened into a dream of amber bulbs and loosened colors. Children slept on chairs arranged like rafts. The band packed cases quietly, the way people whisper in churches. Daniel helped Mai out of the bustle and into her sneakers, the laces white as surrender flags. They walked the hotel hallway hand in hand, silent until the elevator side closed. I keep thinking about the word pause. Mai said. It feels like we pressed it on our lives, not just the ceremony. Daniel squeezed her fingers. Pause is still music. It just means listen harder. The doors opened to the suite floor, and waiting there was her mother, small and rigid against the patterned carpet. Her father stood a step behind. Arms folded, eyes on some fixed point that did not exist. Elise hovered, then caught Daniel's cue and drifted away with a look that said, text me if the room catches fire. Come in, her mother said. Her voice had no edges now, only tired fabric. The living room looked like a stage after the play. Book went slumping, programs stacked like unanswered letters. Mai sat on the low couch. Her parents sat opposite as if at a visa interview. Daniel remained by the window, near but not looming. Tell me, Mai said. All of it. No smoothing. No half versions. I can hold the weight. Her mother looked at her hands as if expecting them to speak. In '94, she began? Houston. We had come north from California to chase a job your father was promised at a machine shop. It vanished when we arrived. We slept on the floor of a cousin's apartment. 6 people. 2 rooms. Cockroaches that looked like they paid rent. Papers were not right. I took work cleaning houses. Your father took anything that made his back hurt. I was 23 and very proud. Pride is expensive. A woman I cleaned for introduced me to a man. She said he helped girls like me. He arranged marriages so girls could work without fear. I thought it was a rope thrown into a storm. Ice. It was a courthouse. Fast. No dress. Just dry air and a signature that left a bruise on my name. He was not cruel. He was not kind. He was nothing. We never lived together. We never touched papers. He disappeared. I told myself we had tricked America at its own game. This is the part where I should say I am ashamed. I am. But I would be lying if I said I would not do it again to keep food in your mouth. Mai listened, the word Houston cracking open like a seed and releasing heat she remembered as a girl. She remembered a folding table, a fan that moved hot air from one side of the room to the other, a cartoon mouse speaking English she did not yet own. Then, her mother said, eyes lifting, there was a clinic. A raid? One morning men came with hard faces and softer voices and asked for names. Where are you from? Who is the father? Your father was at work. If I said his name, he could be taken. If I said the other man's name, he was already gone. I used the other man's name because it existed on paper. It was clumsy. Was survival. A baby was due that winter in a family I cleaned for. They named her May. A clerk wrote it on the wrong line. Somewhere, my name and that baby's and your name swam together on one sheet. I did not know until last year. The county found duplicate threads. They tugged. I tried to tidy the knot. I should have told you. I was afraid the knot would pull you under. I let the silence sit. She could hear the fountain in the courtyard 4 floors down. Water swallowing water. Old stories swallowing new. Her father finally spoke. His voice like gravel poured slow. I knew about the marriage that was not a marriage. I did not know about the clinic. About the other name on the line with our daughters. You did not tell me. His eyes were on his wife. Not cruel. Just ruin? I thought I was protecting you from my stupidity. Her mother said, I have been the sieve. Letting things fall through that should have been caught. I wanted to hand our daughter only the bright parts. But bright without shadow is a lie. It makes the eyes hurt. Daniel moved closer, kneeling beside my so she did not have to be alone in the middle of the room. Is there anyone else who could use that paper not against you? He asked quietly. Any chance someone is twisting it? Her mother's mouth pulled tight. A letter came 2 months ago. No name. Just a demand for money to make the correction go away. I did not answer. I did not tell anyone. I burned it. Blackmail? Daniel said. His voice lost its softness. We need to report it. We need a lawyer who understands immigration and records. We need to make the truth louder than the threat. Her father rubbed his temples. Always paper. Paper that can save you. Paper that can drown you. He looked at my con. I am sorry your day is ash in your mouth. But I would rather you eat ash now than later when the house is full of grandchildren and a wolf knocks on the door with a form in his teeth. My stood and paced once. Twice. The dress whispering behind her like the tide. She looked at her mother. I am angry you hid it. I am not angry at what you did to keep us upright. But this secrecy ends here. No more closets. No more half-lights. We take every piece into the sun. We hire a lawyer. We call the county. We ask for copies. We build a folder so heavy it can anchor a boat. Her mother nodded, tears slipping and not wiped away. Whatever you say. I am done hiding from my child. A knock at the door cut the moment. Elise slipped back in, hair now in a messy bun like a battle standard. I updates. She said. 1. Uncle Long is okay. He. Dehydration. A blood pressure spike. He is furious he missed cake. 2. Tyler is still downstairs in the lobby looking like a man who has realized the difference between bravery and mess-making. He wants to talk to you, but he will leave if you say the word. I looked at Daniel. I owe nothing, but I do owe myself the calm of ending that chapter with my hands on the steering wheel. Daniel nodded. I will be there. Elise flashed a thumbs up. I will orbit outside with a glare and a spare water bottle. They met in a quiet corner of the lobby near a wall of framed photographs of surfers and missions and old orange groves. Tyler stood when he saw her, then thought better of it and sat back down, palms flat on his knees. He looked thinner than she remembered, as if regret were a diet. Thank you for not calling the police on me for ruining your day, he said without looking at her. His mouth twitched at his own failed joke. She took the chair opposite. This is America. We call lawyers. Not police? For paper problems. His shoulders sagged with a breath he had been holding since the courtyard. I thought I was doing the right thing. I have thought that before and been wrong. I keep confusing urgency with goodness. He finally met her eyes. I did love you. I think part of me still does in the way a house loves the outline of furniture long after it has been moved. But that is not a reason to set a match to a wedding. She let him sit in his words. Thank you for saying it, she said. And thank you for bringing the information, even if your timing was a grenade. Next time, you bring it a week before. You text. You email. You send a carrier pigeon. You do not stand up in the back row of my life with fireworks. He nodded like a child, scolded and grateful. Understood. He glanced at Daniel and back. He's a good man. Do not let my ghost haunt your house. She almost smiled. Ghosts only haunt houses that let them. We are changing the locks. We are learning how to bless the threshold every day. He stood then, awkward, hands in his pockets. I will not reach out again unless you ask. I truly hope you two finish this day your way, even if the ceremony happens some other sun. He paused, and I will send you the clerk's name, everything I have, in writing. No more whispers. He left before she could decide what to say. Sometimes leaving is the last good thing a person can do. Back upstairs, Mai found her mother on the phone speaking quick Vietnamese to Aunt Lan. Voice low? Pauses long. Her father was Googling immigration attorneys with the intensity of a man hunting wolves with a flashlight. Elise had taken over the coffee station and was making tea like a field medic. Daniel leaned in the doorway watching the chaos with a kind of awe. We will need copies of every document, he said. Birth certificate. Marriage license? Both of them. Any letters? We will build a timeline. We will write out a statement of facts. We will not let someone else tell this story for us. Mai looked at him and felt the strange piece of certainty. Even paused. This is marriage. She thought. Not the cake or the chair covers or the perfect photos. This? The room with papers and people telling the truth even when it hurts. The person who stands at your shoulder with a pen and a plan and a hand on your back. A text chimed on her phone. So, she had sent a voice memo to Mai. A small, warm thing. I wrote you a song in my head, she said. It goes like this. We will hold the note. The note will hold us. You can borrow it when you need. Mai smiled. The first unbroken smile since the Eisel. She saved the memo and put the phone face down like a candle. They worked for an hour. They made lists. Her mother went to their house to fetch a fireproof box from the top shelf of the closet behind winter coats. Her father called 2 numbers, hung up on a third when a recorded voice tried to sell him a miracle. Elise ordered noodles and spring rolls and 3 kinds of soda because people eat when the ground is moving. Daniel drafted an email to the county clerk's office requesting certified copies and a correction record. He CC'd himself and Mai and her parents. Subject line. Request for records clarification Nguyen family. He read it aloud, each sentence smooth as a step. Mai watched the words create a path across a very dark room. When the food arrived, they ate perched on armrests in the floor. Grace blurred through paper into their fingers and maybe washed some panic away. Her mother returned with the box and set it on the table like an organ donor cooler in a medical drama. The lid creaked. Inside lay a country of paper. Yellowed edges. Sharp corners. Stamps that looked like small bruises. Mai lifted her birth certificate. California. Santa Barbara County. Her father's name on the line where it had always been in her heart. She breathed. Then a hospital admission slip from Houston, 1994. Different spelling of her name in blue ink. A notation that made no sense unless you were scared in 23. A copy of the Texas marriage certificate with her mother's name, paired with a stranger's she had never heard at the dinner table. Mai traced the seal with her finger and did not feel smaller. She felt larger, as if her life were a map that had opened and included deserts and rivers she had not known were hers. There was a knock again, and for a second all of them startled like deer. Elise peeked through the peephole and exhaled. It is Uncle Long and Aunt Lan. Hospital band and all. They entered, bringing a gust of night air and hospital antiseptic and Aunt Lan's flinty competence. Uncle Long hugged Mai with the careful care of a man recently reminded he had a heart. I refuse to miss the end of any story I started, he said. Mai smiled into his shoulder. Never scare us again. He patted her hair. No promises? Life enjoys drama. Aunt Lan took one look at the table and sat with a sound like a sword settling into a scabbard. She rifled through the papers with the efficient scorn of an older sister. Why did you not tell me? She asked Mai's mother. Her tone carried disappointment braided with love. We could have handled this together. We are not new here. Her mother lifted a shoulder. A small gesture with a lifetime under it. I was a sheep. I thought if I made the paper behave, I could pretend time behaved too. Aunt Lan clicked her tongue, then pointed to a line on a photocopy. Here. The clerk's initials. This is the same clerk who processed our neighbor's adoption. She owes me favors because I taught her son algebra when he could not pass. I will call her Monday. We will not be poor and small this time. We will be right and loud. The room brightened by 2 watts. Sometimes hope is not a sunrise. Sometimes it is an aunt with a phone tree. By midnight, exhaustion arrived like an old friend dropping onto the couch without knocking. Her parents took the papers and promised to lock them twice. Aunt Lan marched Uncle Long to bed with threats about salt intake. Elise kissed my cheek and said, "I will be in the next room if you need to scream." Daniel closed the door gently. Silence returned. Not messy now. Just honest. They stood by the window and watched the Pacific make its slow arguments with the shore. The lights along the coast looked like necklaces dropped carelessly on a dresser. Daniel slid his arm around her and rested his chin on her hair. "I want to marry you on a Tuesday," he said. "No one wears tuxes on Tuesdays. No one stands up in the back. We eat cereal for dinner and say vows with milk mustaches." She laughed, head tipping back against him. "That is the sexiest thing anyone has ever said to me." He grinned into her hair. "Seriously? Tomorrow we call lawyers. Next week we set a date that is ours, not the world's. It can be the courthouse or the lemon tree or this carpet right here. I do not care. I want you to know that nothing today touched the part of me that chose you. It is granite. It is boring granite. Unimpressive unless you need it to hold a house." She turned and kissed him, slow, grateful, tasting salt and sugar in relief. When they parted, she spoke into the small space between them. "Thank you for not asking me to choose between you and my family. Thank you for being on my side of the table even when the table was on fire." He brushed her cheek with his thumb. "That is what the certificate is supposed to certify. Not that we loved each other once in front of people, but that we will keep choosing sides." Same side? They slept for a few hours on top of the covers. Fully clothed. Phones face down, shoes kicked under the coffee table. Morning found them where morning often finds survivors. A little rumpled. Still there. Still breathing. Already making lists. The sun was shy at first and then confident. It poured across the carpet and warmed the paper box like a hand on a back. At 8, Elise banged with coffee. At 8:15, Aunt Lan texted a photo of the clerk's business card with a thumbs up. At 8:30, Daniel dialed the number of an attorney whose reviews used the word relentless in a tone of praise. At 9, my mother sent a photo of the jade pendant in her palm with the message. For luck? For courage? For truth? Come home when you are ready. I stared at the pendant photo for a long time. She had not worn it yesterday. She would wear it today. She fastened it around her throat and felt its cool against her skin, tiny planet orbiting a larger gravity. She turned to Daniel. "Let us go tell the truth to a stranger behind a desk. Then let us pick a Tuesday." Tuesday. It sounds like a friend, not a holiday. He lifted the garment bag with her dress inside and shook his head. Smiling. "Save this for the lemon tree. Under the yellow. Under the ordinary light that loves us." They left the hotel past the fountain that kept telling its patient story. The staff waved. Someone shouted, "We saved you, Champag. Come back when you are married." I waved. "We will," she said, and meant it. Outside, the air carried the clean feeling of after. After storm. After worry. After a day that cracked open and refused to close. She looked at Daniel. He looked back. The pause lifted like a stage curtain. The next scene waited, unscored and bright. They stepped into it together. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon polish and ambition. Framed certificates lined the wall, each one a promise that someone here could tame chaos with ink. Her name was Riz, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper pen. She listened without interruption as Daniel, and her parents laid out the papers. When they finished, she leaned back. She said, "We have 3 main issues. 1. The Texas marriage certificate. 2. The clinic record with the wrong name on the wrong line. 3. The blackmail attempt." She ticked them off like beads on a rosary. Good news. None of these make you illegal or invalid as a family. Bad news. They can still be used to scare you if you do not handle them. She outlined the plan. Certified copies. Formal petition for correction. Statement from the hospital if possible. Affidavits from family members who knew the truth at the time. And the blackmail reported immediately, because silence makes predators bold. Her mother shrank a little in her chair. I did not want the government near us again. Ruiz smiled. Not unkind. The government is already near you. Better to invite them in and show them the living room than wait for them to peek through the window. Daniel asked questions, taking notes like a student in a master class. I watched him and felt her love steady into something deep. Like bedrock. Not just romance, not just heat, but partnership forged in paperwork and patience. They left with a folder thick enough to be a shield. Her mother clutched it as if it were both weapon and confession. Her father walked straighter, as if having a plan put bones back into him. Back at the house with the lemon tree, the air smelled of blossoms and damp earth. The tree was heavy with fruit, golden globes against green. It had watched their family through years of storms and birthdays and barbecues. It would watch this too. I touched its bark and whispered, "We are still here." The tree said nothing, but it had been saying the same thing for decades. Still here. That evening, neighbors dropped off food because word had already spread. Rice dishes, tamales, pies, casseroles. Santa Barbara was small enough to gossip, big enough to hold. Elise stayed, shoving chairs around the kitchen to make room for trays. Aunt Lan directed traffic with a spoon like a baton. Even Uncle Long shuffled in, band on his wrist, declaring that if anyone took away his pork belly, he would call another ambulance out of spite. They ate together, crowded and loud. It felt less like a failed wedding and more like a victory feast after surviving battle. I looked around and thought, maybe this is marriage too. Feeding each other, lifting each other, telling the truth even when it bruises. When the plates were empty and the laughter softened, Daniel stood and raised a glass of tea. To her courage. To her family's courage. And to the Tuesday we will pick, when this story becomes one we tell with smiles instead of tears. Glasses lifted. Voices echoed. I flushed, embarrassed and proud. She met Daniel's eyes. She thought, Tuesday. A day that belongs to no one but us. Later, after the guests left and the kitchen was a battlefield of dishes, I slept outside. The night was cool, the lemon tree fragrant. She held the jade pendant between her fingers. It was no longer just luck. It was a promise. Not that life would be easy, but that she would not face it alone. Daniel joined her, sliding his hand into hers. What are you thinking? She smiled. That sometimes a ruined wedding is the beginning of a stronger marriage. He kissed her forehead. Then let us build. Brick a brick? Truth by truth. And under the quiet California stars? They began,